Welcome to the second episode of the Combat Buzz podcast through the Sports Buzz Network. I'm Matthew Kennedy, and my guest today is the Season 31 Ultimate Fighter winner, lightweight champ, Kurt Holobaugh. So very excited to get things going, and let's kick it off. You got an 80% finish rate, and we watched a lot of tape on you before this, and of course, we've kept up with your career as a whole. But you always go for the finish. And, I remember seeing you on the inaugural Daniel White Contender Series, and you got that big knockout win. I think it was Matt Bissett.
Yep.
So, like, how much pride do you take in there being a guy that hunts for the finish?
I think that's just the fighting style, right? And of course, everybody's got their own style. But for me, man, when I get in there, it's like the cage door shuts. I just want to fight. And I'm a grappler. That's the thing. Not a wrestler. I'm a grappler, right? I'm always looking for submissions, which, you know, sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. But, primarily, man, I'm trying to stay on my feet and I'm trying to knock somebody out.
Yeah, definitely. So, what would you say? What do you think your favorite finish would be? You flew through the competition. Your first 9 wins, I think 8 of them were by submission. Is it one of those or later in the career? What would you say?
Man, I had a 14-second knockout before, but I don't know, man. I think probably my favorite finish would probably be my Ultimate Fighter finale against Austin. The way I set the triangle up. Yeah, man, I got to go with that triangle finish for the Ultimate Fighter finale.
Yeah, yeah. And what was it? What was it like to get that win? I mean, most fighters they don't even dream of making it on the show, much less winning the whole thing. Ultimate Fighter, I believe, season 31 champion with lightweight champ whole tournament. I should have went in there and announced it as that, but yeah. So what was that like to get that win? Pretty late in your
Oh
career.
man, it like a dream come true because at that point in time, I've already done a couple stints in the UFC, so I never thought I'd fight in the UFC again. I done shifted my sights to other organizations, and for me to kind of revamp my career and go back to the UFC and do the things that I've done has been like, I don't know, I probably never even dreamed it. So,
Yeah, and what was that fight before that with Jason Knight? That was one of the
you know,
best fights on the Ultimate Fighter. I mean, definitely that year, I would say easily the best fight. And you guys, seem to be pretty close. What was it like getting that win? I think it was the semifinals. What was that like?
yeah, and I mean, it was great, but I mean, I got to give credit to Jason because without the type of fighter Jason is, that fight doesn't go down like that.
Yeah,
And, I've told many people this. We made a mutual agreement. We shook hands and said, hey, we don't take a shot. No, nobody shoots a takedown unless you're just absolutely have to.
yeah,
And we held to it, and that's why that fight was the way it was.
yeah. And that was just super, super legendary fight. I mean, yeah, that was absolutely crazy. And what would you say? You mentioned in the beginning difference between a grappler and a wrestler. Can you elaborate on that?
So yeah, a wrestler's maybe more so just trying to grind you out. He puts you down, he stays on top, doesn't really do a whole bunch, right? You got some wrestlers that are good at smashing guys, busting guys up, elbow, so they're bleeding, they're bloody, and then maybe they take them out towards the end, with a submission. But and then a grappler's a guy who's comfortable off his back, maybe a little too much, but still always can find that submission. I think that's the difference between a wrestler and a grappler. And I feel like most of my losses have been to higher level wrestlers that never really did a whole bunch of damage, but were able to put me down, and I couldn't find that submission. You know what I mean? So I think that's the difference between a wrestler and a grappler.
You mentioned multiple stints in the UFC and other organizations. You were a two-time, two-division champion in a Titan FC. So what was it like? How did you learn? You learned a lot in between your stints, of course. And how was it like fighting in that promotion? What did you take away from it?
Yeah, for sure. And it's like coming out of the UFC, you're in the biggest organization in the world. And honestly, when I came out, I did 2 fights. I did the Strike Force fight against Pat Healy, which was a huge card in Oklahoma City, the final Strike Force. And then I turned right back around a few months later and fought on UFC 159, I believe. And that was the Chael Sonnen and the John Jones fight,
Yeah.
right? So I just fought on two of the biggest cards in history for the UFC, and then the UFC lets me go. So I go back down, fight a couple times around my house on the local circuit, and then I signed with the organization Titan FC, Titan Fighting. So, but that was still good because at the time they're bringing guys that are
Yeah, bunch
former
of them.
UFC guys, former Ultimate Fighter guys. So I'm still on the card, the very first card. I think George Grishel and Mike Ritchie fought. Matt Riddle, fought another former UFC guy. So I'm still around like the UFC level guys, right?
Yeah.
But although maybe even the guy I fought was a tough guy from Kansas City who was on the Ultimate Fighter and stuff like that. So, but it's still different, right? Because you're not in the biggest organization in the world. You're not with that many fans. So, you feel like you don't have as much pressure on you. So when you go back down to the smaller scenes, it's like you don't have that type of pressure, right? So you don't put it all upon yourself. And just being able to be there and build up a little bit because I was still young whenever I went to the UFC the first time. Very young, I'm not gonna say inexperienced, but when I do say inexperienced, I wasn't around. I'm not training with a bunch of UFC fighters like most of the guys today. Most of the guys in the UFC, they're from big gym. They got a bunch of UFC guys in their gym. We had zero, right? And I was probably the highest level guy in the gym at the time whenever I made it to the UFC. So there wasn't really guys around me that are in the UFC showing me what was possible, right? I make it to the UFC, and that's why I say I didn't have the experience. But then I started building myself up in Titan, start fighting tough guys, Bellator guys, UFC, Ultimate Fighter guys. And then, I win a championship, which I'm like, okay, I'm beating these guys outside the UFC that are former UFC Bellator guys. I can win fights in the UFC.
So what was it like living and training with Michael Chandler, another powerful lightweight?
Man, it was great, man. And really, like, I miss the Ultimate Fighter. If I can do that, you know, once a year or every couple years or something, I would probably do it, man, because it's like you're there and you're free. There's no worries, right? And of course, my wife was back home with my kids. You can't call, you can't check on them or anything like that. But if anything was to go wrong, they would let the UFC would let them call you. But I had all the faith in the world in my wife to run my gym and to handle the family stuff, man. And she did such a great job, and I wasn't worried at all. But you get to go on a show. It's a fighter's paradise, especially if you're young and up and coming and you want to be a fighter because you have no worries. You don't have to buy nothing. You're training with the best coaches, the best facilities. You're living in a mansion. You got all the food you want. Not that you can always eat it, but whatever you want, you got. So
Yeah.
it's good, man. You're being shuttled to and from training,
Yeah.
what, two times a day. You come home, you get to jump in your hot tub, you get to relax, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, it sounds like paradise for sure. Um, so yeah, you mentioned your family and your wife. I know she's involved in fighting and combat sports, very accomplished BJJ athlete. And I see your kids are also involved in fighting. And just what's that like as a family man and great family and just being able to share with them the love of the sport?
It's crazy, man, but it always keeps us busy because somebody always has something they're working on, right? So it's like it's almost very rare that one of them doesn't have something they're training for. Either I'm training for a fight, my wife is training for the next world's competition, my son has an MMA fight coming up, and it's like, we never stop. But I love it. I wouldn't rather be doing anything else. And I love the way everybody loves it. Everybody loves what I have going on and what I've built here with my family and all of us being fighters and competitors. It's really, really cool.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it's absolutely incredible. And what would you say? No, you're from Louisiana. It was just a probably biggest card in Louisiana history there, 318. And what did that mean for you? How far has the Louisiana MMA scene come? And just how much has it grown throughout your tenure in the sport?
Yeah, man. It's came such a long way, and especially since I started fighting. And yeah, the card that the UFC brought was incredible. I wish I could have fought on it, but I went and I got to enjoy it as a fan, honestly, and it was fun. I think I would have much rather had fought and been a part of it that way, but it is what it is. But man, it just goes to show you how far Louisiana has come with their fighters. Because I mean, Louisiana has produced some really good fighters, and Dustin being at the top. You know what I mean? And if anybody was in that arena that night, you would have known, right? The crowd was crazy. Everybody loves Dustin, man, and I'm happy to be able to come up with all these Louisiana guys, and I got good relationships with all of them. Honestly, every fighter that's basically come out of Louisiana is a friend of mine, so I'm glad that we all share that together.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. And what would you say, overall, what's your, plans going forward? You got double as many wins as you do losses, even more than that. And are you looking to keep on going? What's the plan?
Man, so here's the thing, and I think I've already told my wife this. I said, I am never going to lay my gloves down in the middle of the ring. First off, I'm going to fight as long as I can fight, right? As long as the UFC keeps giving me fights, I'm going to keep fighting. Now, if something happens and we go a different route, I don't know. I might venture into something else, but I know one thing's for sure is I'm never going to stop training. I don't care if I'm retired or not. So there's no need to lay the gloves down because every time I come to the gym, I'm putting them gloves on. You know what I mean? So, and I just know no matter what, I'm going to miss fighting so much whenever there's comes a time that I can't get into that ring or cage and fight. So, yeah, man, I'm looking just to keep going. I'm ready to see what's next. Hopefully the UFC hits me up soon and gives me a fight. And we're going to go from there. And I'm going to try to get back on a win streak.
You got the 32 pro fights, I think, 33, and very experienced guy. What is some advice to, up and coming dogs that are, trying to make a career like you did out of fighting? What would you say to them?
Yeah, I have guys all the time, and I think the biggest piece of advice I give to them is don't wait. Don't wait around. Like, stay in the gym, stay training, take every opportunity that you get, right? If you're an amateur fighter, you don't need to train 3 months for an amateur fight. You know, I'm trying to get my guys when somebody calls, hey man, I need somebody next week. I'm like, hey, let's go do it, man. You're in shape. You're in the gym every day, right? So, and that's one thing I try to tell guys that I never did. No matter what was going on in my life, I never took time from the gym. I never stopped fighting. Always had a fight scheduled, when I was younger coming up. And I think that's the best way to go. As long as you're not hurt or injured, stay in the gym, stay training.
There any fighters that you specifically looked up to coming up?
I mean, yeah, for sure. Dustin was one of them. Dustin is a guy that is not too far from me, and we were fighting on the same cards locally. And I remember when he got his first break into the WEC before he went to the UFC, and I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. So yeah, Dustin was definitely a guy that I was looking up to. Of course, I think when I first started fighting, I was a big fan of like Chuck Liddell and Tito Ortiz. So I really looked up to those guys because they were the guys that were champions at the time and that were doing the big things. So yeah, but man, every fighter in that sport I looked up to.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. So at what age would you say you realized that you wanted to make something out of fighting?
And I feel like whenever I was like 10 years old, I wanted to be a boxer. And this was like before the UFC hit a big, hit that any kind of platform, right? Before you even knew what the UFC was. I was kind of in a box and I was into Mike Tyson and Holyfield. And I remember just telling people, yeah, I want to be a boxer. I really wanted to be a boxer. I mean, I ain't go far from it. You know what I'm saying? But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, man, from a young age, I think that I knew what I wanted to do.
So, yeah, some born a fighter for sure. Yeah. And you talked about that submission win over Austin Hubbard to become the lightweight tournament champion, tough 31. Just can you just describe again what that feeling was like to beat guy pretty well, fairly well. What was that like?
Well, first off, you go on back to the Ultimate Fighter, right? And this was the 31st season, and I've watched every single one of the seasons before that, including the very first season in 2005 with Forrest Griffin and Stephen Bonner, Diego Sanchez, and Kenny Florian, right? So, man, and when I got the call for the Ultimate Fighter, I wasn't 100% sure I wanted to do it because I hadn't fought in 2 years. I didn't know if I was ever going to fight again. I was signing with organizations that didn't put me to fight yet, and I hadn't fought in 2 years. And then my wife and my teammates were like, dude, just do it. Like, see where it goes. And I'm like, okay. So I did it, and boom, I was on the show. And then I'm on the show, and I'm like, I've watched this show for 30 seasons. You know what I mean? Like, can I really win this show? And then I win the first fight, and I move to the semifinals. And then they didn't have semifinals fights set yet. So you kind of had to go in Dana's office. He brought you in. Hey, who do you want to fight? Who do you think is your easiest path to the finals? And why do you want to fight him? And so campaign, right? And I already knew I was friends with Jason. Jason was a good friend of mine. He don't live about an hour and a half from me right now. And we were supposed to fight years back. And I'm like, Dana, I want to fight Jason. Look, Louisiana versus Mississippi. This was a fight that was supposed to happen like 10 years ago. Why not here? Why not now? He looked at me and he said, okay. And then they made the fight. So I'm like, perfect. Um, but whenever I was able to call my wife and call my manager and like, all right, boys, we're in the finals. It was almost like it was unreal because like you sit back and you watch these shows on TV, and the next thing you know, you're on the show, and then you're going to the finals. So it's a pretty surreal moment. Didn't really quite feel real, and honestly, probably still don't feel real. And actually, while I'm right here, this thing ain't light. It's pretty heavy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But I don't know, man. It's still a surreal feeling. It I feel like I definitely accomplished something and made history. So
Yeah.
it's awesome.
Extremely entertaining as a fighter. And I kind of asked you already, like, taking pride and going for the finish and things like that. And you mentioned difference between a wrestler versus a grappler. And wrestling is such a specifically wrestling is such a dominant style right now, just in general, especially, we see these guys from Eastern Europe dominating. So what would you say, any advice to more pure grapplers, like to stave off the wrestlers?
Yeah, man, you got to wrestle. And honestly, I've really added a lot of wrestling in. And say, there's nothing against wrestling. I love wrestling. I'm just not the best at it. I didn't come up as a wrestler. I came up as a jiu-jitsu guy, pure grappler. Being comfortable on my back. And that's honestly, I think that's what's cost me a lot of fights. Um, but yeah, man, now I feel like my wrestling is a lot better, even though maybe I haven't shown that in my last couple fights. I just felt like I maybe didn't have the chance in the last couple fights. But yeah, you got to work your wrestling, you got to work your jujitsu, you got to work being able to get up from the bottom in the bad positions. That's the best advice I think I can get, no matter what. Don't be comfortable on the ground. Top, stay on top.
Lastly, what would you say out of all the guys, so many entertaining fighters right now? Who would you say is your maybe a sleeper guy that you think is super entertaining and has a bright future?
Super, man, I was really high on my dude Marcus Magida, who just fought this weekend. Man, dude's so good. Um, but of course, I mean, there's just so many guys coming up. Hey, what's his name? That Kevin Vallejos guy, Gene Silva, which I mean, you already see them. Um, and I got my boy Carlos Vera, who just got a fight here soon. He'll be coming up fighting in the San Antonio No card. Man, he could be a sleeper too, man. Dude's good.
Don't want to take up too much more of your time, so thank you for coming on today, and we look forward to talking more and seeing what the future holds. So thank you.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you having me on.